Hi guys, so today's video is going to be a list of some books that I'm hoping to get around to now that fall is almost here. Honestly, the coming of fall basically means nothing where I live because I don't live somewhere where things change pretty colors, leaves on trees, they don't really change colors here. Trees just kind of die. The leaves, they just fall down and they're brown and then nothing pretty happens. The weather is still super hot until all of a sudden it's not. So fall, it doesn't feel like anything is changing, and thus the books that I'm hoping to read, they don't feel very fall by any means. These are just some books that I really wanted to get to this year that I haven't gotten around to yet. At the end of the video, I am going to have a poll for 5 of the stories that I mentioned because for this upcoming season, my primary focus is going to be finishing the first draft of Remnants of Dawn, which is book 2 in my series. The book that I wrote, the first book is Peace and Turmoil, the second one is Remnants of Dawn. They're in the Dark Shore series. And so I am planning on that book coming out by the end of next year. So to make sure that I can dedicate enough time to editing, putting in a professional editor's hands, making sure the cover is good, making sure I have plenty of time for beta readers to read it and give me feedback, incorporate that. To make sure all that happens, I really want to get this first draft completed by the end of this year. And when I'm gonna have my time divided between reading and writing, I might have to put writing before reading. However, if there is a certain book that pretty clearly wins and that you guys want me to read the most, that'll be the one that gets the most priority, and I will absolutely make sure that I get around to that book. All of that jibber jabber out of the way, the first book on the list would be Malice. This is a book that I have owned for a while, and I actually get asked quite often my thoughts on this series because a lot of times you can see it in the background. You can't currently right now, but I always feel so bad too when people have read this and they're like, oh my gosh, I love that series, it's so good, and I'm like, I don't know, sorry, I can't contribute to this at all. So the reason I actually own the first 3 because I heard they were good and I had store credit one time at my local used bookstore. I found them, they were in great condition, they were very cheap. So I got the first 3, and since then I have not read them. Next up, I would like to finally get into one of the Dritz books. I've been told that Icewind Dale is the best one to start with. I know some people disagree and think you should start with I think it's called the Dark Elf trilogy, but I want to stick to publication order as much as possible, and I've heard really great things about this series. I've had a lot of people tell me that Dritz is very similar to Geralt from Witcher. You guys know I love Witcher. I mean, I own the Polish editions. I can't even read them. That is stupid, but I love it. So if I can find a main character that's similar to Geralt, chances are I'm gonna really like the story. Next one on this list would be The Toll, which is the 3rd and final book in the Arc of the Scythe series by Neil Shusterman or Schusterman. I've heard it pronounced both ways, and I don't know which one it is. This is such, this is such a unique story. It's dystopian, and the writing is very simplistic, but the premise is super dark, and I love it. And it's about a society, it's our own world in the far future, and there is essentially no more death. There's no wars, there's no disease. We have conquered death, and the only threat to mankind is overpopulation. I'm sure a lot of you have heard this before. So the way in which society has decided to deal with this issue to make sure that the world is not overpopulated is to have a revered group of individuals known as scythes to go around and murder people. That's their solution. I absolutely loved the first 2, and like I said, it has a very simplistic, very digestible writing style, which I actually really appreciate in the story because it tackles some pretty interesting, like, what does it mean to be alive and to be a human, and it tackles like those kinds of things, and it reflects on that really well. But I feel like the author could have so easily decided to be really snooty and pretentious about it, and I don't feel that he was at all, and I think the very simplistic writing style helps with that. I just think that it's a really good read, and the last one left off on such a cliffhanger, and I really, really want the 3rd one. My friend Kristen from Super Space Chick got an arc of the 3rd one, and I'm super jealous. I was like, how did you get that? You don't deserve it, jokingly, because she's great and she definitely deserves it, but yes, I'm very jealous. I want to read it early. The next book on this list would be The Queen of Nothing. And once again, it is the third and final book in a series, and that would be The Cruel Prince, Wicked King. I think it's called The Folk of the Air, written by Holly Black. And again, the second one left off on quite the cliffhanger, and I enjoyed the second book a lot. The first one, I was like, I thought it was okay. I didn't hate it, but I was intrigued enough to read the next one. And the next one was just so stupid entertaining, and I just thought it was so fun. And I think it helps that I read it when my dog was a very little puppy when we first brought her home. And I'm not trying to be dramatic here, but I'm going to be dramatic in saying that I felt like I was a new mother, and I know it's so offensive to actual parents. But I mean, like, I was losing sleep. The dog would like cry all the time. She would wet herself. I'd have to give her baths. Like, I couldn't do anything without having to check what she was doing and make sure she wasn't getting into stuff. Anyway, I was just very exhausted all the time. And when she would take naps, again, I sound like a parent. When she would take naps, I was like, oh, I can read now. And I read that second book at that time, and I had so much fun with it. And so I think it has like a weird, I guess, nostalgia for me now, because I associate it with bringing me joy at a time that was like kind of stressful and joyous. But anyway, I'm excited for the third one. That's what I'm getting at. The last of the books for you guys to vote on would be Starsight by Brandon Sanderson. I actually feel like you guys are gonna vote for this one just because I'm a huge Sanderson fan, and so are a bunch of you. And I do really want to read Starsight. I mean, Skyward was so much fun. When I first started it, I was like, oh, this feels like a little extra young. It definitely feels like the younger side of young adult. I wasn't sure if I was gonna love it. Nothing wrong with younger side of young adult, but I'm not super young, and so sometimes I have a hard time connecting. But Sanderson, as usual, his character arc for the main character Spensa was just so good, and I just couldn't help but get sucked into that world. And it was so fast-paced, and the stakes were really high, and I just thought it was such a blast to read. But on top of that, had some pretty emotional moments, and I loved it. I ended up loving it so much. For those of you that don't know, it follows a girl in another planet who they are constantly being attacked by aliens, and their only defense is their air force. And she really wants to be a pilot, but back in the day, her dad abandoned, and now everybody's like, you're the daughter of a coward. Somehow that must run in your blood, basically. And so it's even harder for her, and she has to persevere to get her dreams and also maybe fight some aliens. It's really fun. The last two things on this list, these aren't ones that are up for vote because I don't know if I'll have time for them. One of them would be more Vinland Saga. I told you guys that I was going to try to basically shove this in your face anytime I could, because the anime that's been coming out for this is mwah, it's so good, and I really want everybody to read it. It's a Viking story. It's historical fiction, so obviously it's based in some real things, but it's fiction, so some things aren't, exactly what it was like. It's definitely a story, and it's a good one. It's so good, and it is not, for the premise, not super action-packed like one might think. It's actually a lot of character growth, and you're spending time with the character as they're going through some pretty difficult things. So it's not just wham bam, kick butt, being a Viking all the time. Sometimes it's just reflecting and thinking, and I love that kind of stuff. If you guys haven't seen it yet, you should definitely see it. It's so good. But I would like to get further into the manga. And the last thing that I'm hoping to get around to would be Warcross by Marie Lu. This is one of those stories that's kind of like Ready Player One, where there's a character who kind of competes in this virtual game. The character is actually a hacker, and when she hacks her way into the game, she thinks that she's caught and that she's gonna get in a lot of trouble, but they're like, you're really good at this. We want you to compete. And so now she's kind of competing in the thing that she had been hacking into. And I heard mixed things about Warcross, but I still think it sounds like a lot of fun, so I would like to pick it up at some point. Besides all these things, I am planning to reread the Stormlight Archive books. Those are the things that are taking the most precedence, and I would like to continue reading Malazan and doing one of those books until the end of the year. So I will for sure be reading those, and then these ones that I listed are if I have time, except for whichever one you guys end up voting on, I'll for sure read that one. But anyway, let me know what books you're planning to read this fall? Are you the mood reader and you're like, I'm just gonna see whatever fits my fancy when I'm lounging around and I'm like, I want to read? Or are you somebody that has planned out every single thing that you're planning on reading till the end of the year? Anyway, let me know. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you all later. Bye.